Thanks for pushing that play button. Today's topic here on Leader Seeds Podcast, we're going to talk about a super important question that nobody likes to ask. So stay with us to the end because we're going to have some fun unpacking it. I'm going to give you a quick framework that we can remember. And we'll spend about 20 minutes here today. So stick with us to the end. I'll leave some stuff at the end of how you can stay connected with us. Check it out. Let us know what you think. But first and foremost, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Hey, so let me tell you a little bit about Anchor Podcast and what it does. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain why. Number one, it's free. Number two, there's actually tools that allow you to record it right from your phone and computer, and you can edit it and everything right there. Super easy. The next thing is that Anchor will help distribute your podcast over Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many other different platforms that you can be heard on. The next thing is that if you're looking to make any kind of income, Anchor can help you with that too. So it's really everything that you need in a podcast all in one place. So wherever you get your apps from, download Anchor Podcasts. And once you get things started, let me know and I'll listen in and see what you're sharing too. Thanks, guys. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our Leader Seeds podcast. My name is Jordan and I'll be your host today. Actually, I'll be your host every time we have these Leader Seeds podcasts because this is the podcast that we send out information on for healthy and high impact leadership. So if you're joining us for the first time, I want to invite you to go check out our trailer. It tells you a little bit more about what we do here, but I'm going to tell you what we're doing specifically today. And today what we're doing is one style of podcasting episodes that we do is I actually take blogs that I post and we actually put that into an audio format. That way, if you don't read the blogs, you can get the same information and contact right here on the podcast. So there's times that we do that. That's what it is today. I'll tell you the topic, and the topic is probably something I'm pretty excited about, but initially, it's kind of the topic that most people don't want to bring up. You see, we all have to face our weaknesses, right? We all got to face them. But nobody wants to bring them up. I'll raise my hand, right? Like nobody wants to bring up their weakness, right? But we got to face it. Like we know that. So what do we do, right? What do we do in that situation? Well, today we're going to talk about 5 effective strategies to overcome your weakness. And this has been put together by the 10, 15 years that I've been working and coaching people in leadership with many different industries and all that stuff. But here's the thing is not just my perspective on it. This is with some research done, and we've kind of identified 5 effective strategies on how to overcome weaknesses. And the reason is because if we don't bring it up, we won't overcome it. Right? So we got to bring it up. We got to see what people are doing to overcome it. That way we all face them, but we don't have to be defeated by it. Right? So be excited about today's episode and the topic because the hope is that you'll get some effective, maybe even just one. I'll give you 5, but there'll be one that will be a little bit new. That will be maybe like a new insight that you'll get a chance to see, let me try and implement that in my day. So with that being said, I want to cover some real foundational stuff really quickly. If this is the first time you're joining us, I want to welcome you with open arms and kind of give you an audio version of a handshake or a high five, just saying thanks for checking us out. I really appreciate it. What you'll find here is basically what we call healthy and high impact leadership development. And it all starts with daily seeds. It's how we set that foundation in our leadership that really can bless every area of our life, not just our business, but also our home, also our, your spiritual walk, your faith walk, also your finances and everything else. Because when we grow in our leadership at the core, it blesses every area of our life, not just one, right? Most times leadership is just focused on your business, entrepreneur, or your work or career success. But here's the thing is, this already. I'm going to tell you something you already know. You know that if you succeed in one area of life, say you succeed at work, but there's failure at home, there's no fulfillment, right? There's actually greater stress in that time. So I'm passionate about actually eliminating that stress component, eliminating that unnecessary stress component, because there is stress that's good. That's a whole new topic at another day. let's go ahead and focus in today. And before we dive into there, I want to welcome back our supporting family, our faithful supporters that actually check us out from when we started over a year ago. And now we get a chance to reach over 7 countries on this podcast. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. So we're really excited. And we want to say thank you for your continued support to kind of check us out and stay connected. I'm going to share some things at the end of the podcast that's going to be exciting to share with you about how the podcast is growing because of your support there. So let's dive right into the topic today. And the topic that we're talking about is 5 effective strategies for overcoming weakness. Now, here's the thing is I'm going to start it off. I'm going to break the ice with this question. What's your weakness? That's probably the question that we dread, or we ask. We're hoping that the interviewer doesn't ask us. Right? If you go to a job interview, or if you're being interviewed for a podcast or a TV show or whatever it is, if you're speaking at an event, you're really hoping that they don't ask you that question, right? Like, what are your weaknesses, right? But what if they do? What if they do? Are you ready for it? So I'm going to ask this right now. You don't have to answer it because you can just listen in and maybe you can just answer it by writing it down. But what are your weaknesses? Have you identified them yet? Right? Here's a quick life hack with this. Just look at what are your strengths. What do you do well? We want to talk about that. Let's talk about what we do well. What's your strengths? Now, if you flip the opposite side of that strength, most times there's a weakness that lies there, right? Because it's kind of like a blind spot, something we do well, a strength of ours, we have great focus on, right? And we're really good at that. No one has to tell us to spend extra time on that thing or whatever you're doing because you love it and you're focusing so much on it. But the thing is, when you're focusing on something, there's something you're not focusing on, right? If I'm focusing right here, just looking at this camera, there's things behind me I'm not focusing on. So that's my blind spot right now. Visually, we understand that. But also when you think about it mentally it's the same thing when we're thinking about our strengths. When we're focusing on something, there's a blind spot that we're not. So why this topic is exciting is because this covers everybody. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your level of success. It doesn't matter your education level. It doesn't matter where you're raised. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. Right? We all have. It doesn't matter if you keep growing and you keep becoming more successful. Guess what? You still have a blind spot. You still have a weakness, right? Something that we're not as focused on as compared to what other people are focused on, right? And my hope today is when we dive into these 5 strategies, you'll see that when you overcome them, we don't have to be as intimidated by weakness, because that first part in it, weakness. Most times, if I'm honest with you, I feel weak talking about my weakness, right? So my hope is that when we talk about these 5 points right now that I wrote out in the blog, we won't have to feel so weak when we think about our weakness. You can actually feel empowered now because you know exactly how to overcome them. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Give me a quick maybe this clap wherever you're at. Let me know that you're good to go. We're actually recording this live on video too for the first time. One more upgrade with the podcast that we're doing. We haven't done video in the past year, but we're moving into that format right now. So if you want to find us on YouTube, check us on YouTube. I will leave all that information before. Let's get right into the content. If you're still listening in, here we go. Once again, we always encourage our listeners, note takers, are difference makers. So make a difference, take some notes. And what will happen is that what you're hearing today won't just be what you hear, but will also be what we can do and implement. So let's go ahead and get that started today. Now, the first thing is a weakness doesn't have to be like a hindrance. It doesn't have to be a form of like weak. I know we say weakness is like, Jordan, that's the title of it. I get that. But it doesn't have to still be that empowering over us, because we're gonna put some light on it today. We're gonna put some light on it. Now, these techniques are very strategic, and they only work if you implement it. You know, so I want to encourage you to take the idea and put it and apply it. Right? At least pick one today and say, I'm going to try one of these, whatever it is. If you want to be a rock star, do all 5, but at least do one. Fair enough? Fair enough? Okay, awesome. So the first one is we want to decide, number 1, if you're writing things down, number 1, the first way to strategically overcome areas of our weakness is, number 1, decide if it's even relevant. Is this weakness even relevant for me to pay attention to? Here's an example. Now, maybe your weakness is athletics, but maybe your profession is not. Do we have to sit and feel junk about our weakness? Absolutely not. It's irrelevant in a situation, right? But you'd be surprised how many times people are still affected by weaknesses that are completely irrelevant. I'll talk to people at some times and then they'll be very stressed about something that may possibly happen. I may have to do my finances and I have no idea. That's a weakness of mine. Oh my, and they go into this really deep cycle and they kind of just kind of stay in there, stuck in there, and they're really worried about what might happen. Have you done that? Chances are we've all done that, right? Because we're really focusing on what might happen. And the thing about a weakness is that it brings up a little bit of a sore spot. It brings up a little bit of maybe uncomfort. And when we kind of see that coming, it's kind of like the yield sign on a road that's saying, hey, danger's coming, or maybe the danger sign that's saying, hey, watch out. And we start to experience that right now. Here's the thing is, you can eliminate that, all that unnecessary stress, by really just saying, is this even relevant? Is it relevant that I stress on this right now? Right? And that's it. That is as simple as that. That's one way, by just asking yourself that, by implementing that, by saying, is this relevant that I stress on this weakness? If it's not, don't worry about it. Like I said, we all have weaknesses, but is this relevant to stress on in the moment, right? Consider your life goals. Do your weaknesses get in the way? Do your weaknesses get in the way of either of your life goals? If not, don't worry about it. That's it. It's really that simple. Really is. Now, the next thing is, we want to, number 2. If you're taking notes again, go ahead, write number 2. The second one is work around your weaknesses. Now, this is all about the situation and the environment. Okay? The situation and the environment. Write down, work around your weaknesses. Now, I'm going to explain that. I'm going to expand that a little bit more. Now, what that means is that you want to look at the situation or the environment and you want to work around that. Let's say if you had to go ahead and deliver a speech, or you had to put together a presentation at work or at school or in the community or something else, and you don't feel comfortable. A weakness of yours is to kind of answer questions on the spot, right? Like you have to think about stuff in a moment. You feel comfortable in delivering information you studied on, but you want to eliminate like those last minute questions. Here you go. You don't have to feel like you have to do a Q&A or an open mic every single time. You can just leave them an email at the end and say, hey, send me your questions. Now you're changing a situation, right? Because that's a weakness of yours, right? You can prepare ahead of time. You can deliver the information that you prepared on. And at the end, you can still provide a way that people can ask you questions. It's just that it's not in the spot of you having to come up with the answers right away. Here's an email, here's a phone number, here's a way to contact me after with your questions, and I'd love to answer them. Because you understand that that's just a weakness. You're changing the environment. You're overcoming this by changing the situation or the environment. Here's another example. Say cooking, right? You don't feel comfortable in cooking, right, at home. Hey, no shame in the game. Go ahead and go get one of these prepared or maybe halfway prepared meals and put things together. I would sometimes combine 2 halfway complete meals. Did I say halfway compared? Halfway complete meals, like ready to cook, right? You kind of combine them together, and then it's like it's unrecognizable. People don't recognize that, hey, that chicken's from here and that vegetables from here. No, because you put it together and now you have something, or you got a starch and then you put some pasta on it and boom, you're overcoming a weakness area by changing the situation or the environment. Right? That's what you want to do here. This is the way you work around your weakness. This one has to do everything about looking at the situation or the environment and adjusting that accordingly. Okay? Now here we go. Now number 3, write down number 3. This is the third way to overcome areas of our weakness. And number 3 is to focus on your strength. Write that down. Focus on your strength. You see, most successful people are great at working around their weaknesses because they maximize their strength zone. Now let's back up a little bit here. There's a powerful study that really shift the way I thought about things. And if you haven't heard it before, chances are it's going to do the same thing to you, because we've all grew up in a situation, in an education environment, where when you are struggling in an area in the school year, what what class does that student take at summer? So let me frame that again. If a student is having a hard time with a certain subject in the year, the school year, what topic or subject are people going to most encourage that student to take in the summer? The one they're struggling in, right? It's like, hey, if you're having a hard time in math, take a math class in the summer. If you're having a hard time in English, take an English class in the summer. Here's the challenge with that. Like, I understand where it's like, hey, we want to better that part, right? But here's the challenge with that. When we approach that first, okay, this is all about priority. When we approach that first, what happens is that we're trying to force ourselves to do something that we're not naturally good at. So here's a flip side. What if we took something in the summer that we're really good at? Imagine that student. Is that student more excited to continue learning? Absolutely, right? That student, once again, is now more motivated to learn. They feel more confident in their learning skills, and there's a good momentum starts to happen. What happens is that when we're kind of trying to force ourselves to better our weakness and completely forget about our strengths, what happens is that confidence levels drop, anxiety and depression start to rise up, right? All of these things that aren't healthy and good start to take more advantage of us, start to grow on us, right? So see, this is what I mean. This is how we can strategically overcome these areas of weakness, because we don't want that to rise up. What we want to rise up is we want to be more motivated to learn because we're doing something we're strong in. We want to be more excited. We want to be more confident. But the thing is that if we force ourselves in an area of our weakness, nobody is going to last in that situation. So number 3 is focus on your strength. How you overcome your weakness is by actually spending more time on improving your strength. True. When you improve your strength area, what happens is that you don't just become more intellectually advanced or more smarter, if you want to say. You actually rise up your weakness too, because it all works together. It all starts to grow together. So number 3 is focus on your strengths. What do you do well? What do you love to do? What just comes natural to you? Spend more time on that, right? Now, the key point in here, the little caveat, if I want to say, is I'm saying spend more time. I'm not saying totally act like the weakness isn't there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if you have 100% of your time, 80% is on your strength, 20% on your weakness. What happens is that when we're on the flip side, what happens before is that we're trying to spend 80% on our weakness, and we're trying to grow and push, and we're only doing 20% of our strength. We want to flip that. Momentum is built when we're spending more time on your strength zone. So go ahead and write that down. Now let's look at number 4. Number 4 talks all about delegation. You want to delegate. I did a really fun podcast about, it's called Delegating versus Dumping Off. And if you want to check that out, go ahead and look for that in the podcast. You look for that title, listen to it. It's probably one of our most popular, most talked about kind of hot topics for 2020. So I want to invite you to go check it out. In there, I kind of really give a framework on what delegation is. But in this right now, number 4, a way to overcome your strengths is to delegate. So in number 2, we talked about changing the environment. In number 4, we're talking about identifying the people that are strong where you're weak, right? Who loves to do something that you just have a really hard time doing, right? Recently, I got a chance to work with a lot of leaders and a lot of leaders find like maybe a task of admin work is not something they enjoy, right? So you want to find people that really enjoy admin work, that they actually love to do it. They look forward to that. When you find somebody that does that, what happens is that you can build a relation, a trust, and have good communication with the person, and you can actually help to develop them in something that you're actually, and what happens is as you develop them to work in their strength zone, they're developing you, right? So it's kind of a win-win. They're developing you because this is an area that you're not strong in, right? So by watching them in their strength zone, it actually helps you in that time. Here's a little tip, a little ninja tip, if you want to say, that I encourage people when I'm working one-on-one with them. This is something I encourage them when they identify this part of delegation, and then I challenge them a little bit. So I'm going to challenge you as you're listening today, that when that's happening, if that's happening for you, and it can be at work, if there's somebody that's helping with a task, it can even be at home if a child is helping something, at home, in a home atmosphere, right? Now, when that's happening, when that's going, when that's kind of present in that situation, here's something you want to do. You want to identify, you want to observe that person in their strength zone and identify what gets them excited. If you can't just observe it, you want to ask them, because success leaves clues. And at some point, if that coworker has to like maybe level up, or they're going somewhere else, or they have to transport to another job assignment, or that child gets older and they move out, guess what? You don't have that person you can delegate to right now, but you learn from watching them in their strength zone, right? So this, like I said, this is a level up kind of strategy where you're watching someone in their strength zone work directly with you, and you can actually observe what pushes them forward. And chances are, when you observe it, you probably can implement it in your life too, in one shape or form, right? Now, this is the thing too, is we want to also adjust our expectation with this. When you're working on your strength, on your weakness, I want to say, you want to understand that you're not trying to do this at 100% like your strength zone, right? Now, that's going to take us to number 5. Number 5 for today that we're covering is strengthen the area of weakness. This is a last resort. And number 3, we talked about maximizing your strengths, right? And I really put a lot of emphasis on, you want to focus your time on your strengths. You don't want to focus on your weakness. So if you're seeing this and you're like, Jordan, you just told me, no, let me clear it up. You want to focus on your strengths first. Most times we're more fearful of our weakness, so when we have more attention on the weakness, that the priority is out of order. You want to focus on your strengths first. Then if that's not working, if you're doing all those things as a last resort, then I always encourage people, this is how you strengthen your area of weakness, okay? This is how you do it. When you're strengthening your area of weakness, when you're taking that math class that you failed during the year, you just got to do it because you've been putting it off, and you're like, I got to get that credit, or you got to do admin because you don't have an admin person, you don't have an assistant, but you're leading a team and it has to be done. So you have to do it. You want to strengthen your weakness. Here's how you do it. You adjust your level of expectation first. You understand that this isn't something that you have to hold yourself accountable to doing 110%. No, it isn't. You want to adjust that, hey, 10, 20%, that's good. Let's look at a target. If you had a target, right? If you had a target, when you're looking at a bullseye, that bullseye has rings from the outside of the bullseye to the center, right? We want to understand, when we're strengthening your area of weakness, the goal isn't the bullseye. It's not. The goal is getting it on the board. That's it. Get it on the board. Even if it's on the outside ring, it's on the board. It's a win. It's your area of weakness. We can't expect to hit the bullseye with this. But if you get on the board, it's a win, and we got to celebrate it as a win. Eventually, you'll start to get closer. But in an area of your weakness, you don't want to shoot for the bullseye. You want to shoot to get on the board. That's it. So when you're working on your weakness, this isn't an ideal or an optimal situation. But like I said, it's a last resort, and it's a way to keep momentum moving forward if you can't delegate, if you try to work on your strengths, but you have a hard time with that. Here's another life hack when you're working on your area of weakness. Your area of weakness is somebody else's strength. So I want to encourage you to actually go ahead and get expert advice. You can get expert advice. In today's world, it's super easy. Read some books. Look for books on things that are kind of your weakness. But look at more. You can look for books, but also look for, maybe I want to say, executive summaries. Because if you see an executive summary of the book, you don't have to read the book because it's not an area that's interesting to you, but you can get the key points to see. Listen to podcasts, right? Listen to podcasts. It's a quick way to get some insight on seeing how people have expert or strengths in an area, and you can kind of see some key points on what they can do with that. Hire a coach. I'm a big believer in hiring a coach because a coach has a personal interaction with you. If you listen to just a podcast, if you listen to just books, you can get the information, but sometimes it's tricky applying that information in your personal life, right? How do I make this real for me? Well, a coach will help you do that because a coach will know you personally and will know what you're going through, and I can help you take the ideas and implement it personally so you can get results in your life. So hiring a coach is always something I want to encourage. I'm a big believer in it. I've been doing it since my younger 20s. That's about 20 years right now. And it's always good to have some way of somebody to have a different perspective on how you're doing things and hold us accountable ultimately when we're kind of pushing forward for stuff. Now, whatever the issue is, whatever the topic is, it's going to be better with some kind of expert help in that situation. Remember, not all weaknesses need to be addressed. If you suffer from seasickness, you don't have to get on the boat. Right? It's irrelevant. We don't have to do that. So I'm going to recap really quickly as we're kind of landing this and closing this up. Many weaknesses can be avoided with some kind of planning, kind of looking forward, learning that we walked into it at one situation, but we don't have to keep walking into it. Surprisingly, we can plan and we can see it coming ahead of time if we're intentional, right? Now, others can be kind of managed through delegation, right? As we're going through it, we can take it one step at a time. We can delegate it through. Ideally, you'd be able to leverage your strengths and simply avoid your weaknesses altogether, right? That's an ideal situation, but that isn't always possible. So I want to be real with you. There's going to be times it's necessary to work on your weakness, right? We can, as leaders, this is a podcast on leader seeds. I want to call leaders out and kind of challenge you because I believe in you when a lot of times leaders only want to work in their strength zone. Here's the thing is when you only want to work in your strength zone, people that are watching you and observing you see that you're not willing to be weak at times, right? And that actually leads to some kind of issue with trust. They have a hard time trusting you because they only see you so perfect. They only see you so in your strength zone, right? When you see someone struggling with somebody, when you see someone kind of still being willing to show up, even though they don't do something good, still being willing to do a task, even though it's not maybe their favorite task, there's a form of trust starting to build, and trust in any team atmosphere, trust in a leadership atmosphere is one of the biggest compliments that you can ever get when someone trusts you. So you want to be able to actually go ahead and not just only be in our strength zone all the time, but be willing to jump into things and even open saying, hey guys, I know I don't do this well, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Right? And people honor that. When people see people going through that, they honor that situation. So I want to encourage you, strength zone is awesome, but don't live in your strength zone. Do things that challenge you a little bit because your weakness will grow you much quicker and better and will actually give you more freedom, I want to say, than always being just in your strength zone. That's it for today. That's the end of the blog. That's the end of this podcast. And I want to thank you for joining us here. I'm going to tell you some ways that we've kind of leveled up with the podcast and ways you can stay connected. If you're watching this on the video, go ahead and check out in the top corner there. You're going to see a phone number that I put there, and I'll actually put it in a banner style at the bottom also. Let's do this here. So you see a phone number that's going across there, and I'll tell you the number if you're listening to it on the audio version. That number is 808-758-5733. That number is a direct number to me. I'll get the number. It's not a group text. I'll get your text. And why would you do that? Well, this is a way that we're kind of really keeping a close community, a way that we can have, if you got questions on the podcast, if you have some answers, or anything else, some insight. Maybe you just want to know when the new ones are posted. That way you don't have to dig for it, right? What I'll do is when you text me this number, you'll get my contact. You can save it in your phone. And then, like I said, it's not a group text. It's actually a thing called community. And it's a great way to kind of keep social media and podcasting and this digital world, kind of keep it real and personal. So we set that up with the podcast. This number comes directly to me. It's not a bot. It's not anybody managing it. It's directly to me. So I want to invite you to go ahead and text that number. Just text podcast to that. And what happened is that anytime we go ahead and kick out a new episode, we'll actually send it to you directly. And it will also have some cool interaction. And we've got an ebook coming out. We'll send that to everyone also. So once again, that number is 808-758-5733. Write that down. I'll say it one more time, 808-758-5733. 533. Yep, text that right now today. Just text podcast to that, and you'll be locked in right there. Your information is safe with us. It's not shared with anyone else. And like I said, it's directly to me. It's not a bot or anything else. So you'll see that, and we can kind of interact and keep each other growing in this journey of leadership development. Thanks for joining us today. We'll wrap up as we always do. This is Jordan signing off on our Leader Seeds podcast, when we truly believe that leadership at high impact can also be healthy leadership. We never have to sacrifice a healthy lifestyle to be a high impact leader. Let's go ahead and wrap up today. Join us on the next episode. Make it great today. Do all things in excellence. Have a great one, guys.